It would help if I opened the damn book. Okay, chapter 2. Leaving behind a grieving husband and child. We must comfort them. High Chancellor... Oh, let me do that again, but as a voice. Leaving behind a grieving husband and child. We must comfort them. High Chancellor Thomas wound down after droning on for almost an hour. Some of his speech had been about mother. At least the words Lady Eleanor were spoken often, but the person they described, dutiful parent, loyal citizen, steadfast spouse, sounded more like the High Chancellor than like my mother. Part of the speech had been about dying, but more was about giving allegiance to Kira and its rulers, King Gerald, Prince Charmant, and the entire royal family. Father reached for my hand. His palm was moist and hot as a hydra swamp. I wished I had been allowed to stand with Mandy and the other servants. I pulled out of his grasp and moved a step away. He closed the distance between us and took my hand again. Mother's casket was made of gleaming mahogany carved with designs of fairies and elves. If only the fairies could leap out of the wood and cast a spell to bring her back to life, and another one to send Father away. Or maybe my fairy godmother would do it if I knew where to find her. When the High Chancellor finished, it was my task to close the casket so Mother could be lowered into her grave. Father put his hands on my shoulders and pushed me forward. Mother's mouth was stern, the opposite of its look in life, and her face was empty, which was awful. But worse was the creak as the coffin lid went down and the dry click when it closed, and the thought of Mother packed away in a box. The tears I had swallowed all day erupted. I stood there before the whole court, crying in an infant's endless wail, unable to stop myself. Father pressed my face into his chest. Perhaps he appeared to be comforting me, but he was only trying to muffle my noise, which couldn't be muffled. He let me go. In a sharp whisper, he said, "Get away from here. Come back when you can be quiet." For once, I was glad to obey. I ran. My heavy black gown tripped me, and I fell. Before anyone could help me, I was off again, my knee and hand stinging. The biggest tree in the graveyard was a weeping willow, a crying tree. I plunged through its leaves and threw myself down, sobbing. Everyone called it losing Mother, but she wasn't lost. She was gone, and no matter where I went, another town, another country, fairyland, or gnome caverns, I wouldn't find her. We'd never talk again, or laugh together, or swim in the river Lucarno, or slide down the banister, or play tricks on Bertha, or a million things. I cried myself out and sat up. My gown had changed in front from black silk to brown dirt. As Mandy would have said, I was a spectacle. How much time had gone by? I had to go back. And I have to turn the page. Yeah. Father had told me to, and the curse was tugging at me to obey. Outside the privacy of my tree, Prince Charmant stood, reading a tombstone. I had never been so near him before. Had he heard me cry? Although the prince was only 2 years older than I, he was much taller, and he stood just like his father, feet apart, hands behind his back, as though the whole country was passing by on review. He looked like his father, too, although the sharp angles of King Gerald's face were softened in his son. They each had tawny curls and swarthy skin. I'd never been near enough to the king to know whether he also had a sparkling of freckles across his nose, surprising on such a dark face. "Cousin of mine," the prince said, gesturing at the tombstone. "Never liked him. I liked your mother." He started walking back toward her tomb. Did he expect me to come with him? Was I supposed to maintain a suitable distance from his royal self? With enough room for a carriage to pass between us, I walked at his side. He moved closer. I saw he had been crying too, although he had stayed upright and clean. "You can call me Char," he said suddenly. "Everyone else does." "I could?" We walked in silence. "My father calls me Char too," he added. "The king." "Thank you," I said. "Thank you, Char," he corrected. Then, "Your mother used to make me laugh. Once at a banquet, Chancellor Thomas was making a speech. While he talked, your mother moved her napkin around. I saw it before your father crumpled it up. She had arranged the edge in the shape of the Chancellor's profile, with the mouth open and the chin stuck out. It would have looked exactly like him if he were the color of a blue napkin. I had to leave without dinner so I could go outside and laugh. We were halfway back. It was starting to rain. I could make out one figure, small in the distance, standing by Mother's grave. Father. Where did everyone go? I asked Shar. They all left before I came to find you, he said. Did you want them to wait? He sounded worried, as if perhaps he should have made them stay. No, I didn't want any of them to wait, I answered, meaning Father could have gone too. I know all about you, Shar announced after we'd taken a few more steps. You do? How could you? Your cook and our cook meet at the market. She talks about you. He looked at me sideways. Do you know much about me? No. Mandy had never said anything. What do you know? I know you can imitate people just as Lady Eleanor could. Once you imitated your manservant to his face and he wasn't sure whether he was the servant or you were. You make up your own fairy tales and you drop things and trip over things. I know you once broke a whole set of dishes. I slipped on ice. I gotta turn the page. Ice chips you spilled before you slipped on them. He laughed. It wasn't a ridiculing laugh. It was a happy laugh at a good joke. An accident, I protested, but I smiled too, tremblingly, after so much crying. We reached Father, who bowed. Thank you, Highness, for accompanying my daughter. Char returned the bow. Come, Eleanor, Father said. Eleanor? No one had ever called me that before, even though it was my real name. Eleanor had always been Mother, and always would be. Ella. I'm Ella, I said. Ella, then. Come, Ella. He bowed to Prince Charmant and climbed into the carriage. I had to go. Char handed me in. I didn't know whether to give him my hand or to let him push up on my elbow. He wound up with the middle of my arm, and I had to grasp the side of the carriage with the other hand for balance. When he closed the door, I caught my skirt, and there was a loud ripping sound. Father winced. I saw Char through the window, laughing again. I turned the skirt and found a gash about 6 inches above the hem. Bertha would never be able to make it smooth. I arranged myself as far from Father as possible. He was staring out the window. A fine affair. All the Frel came. Everyone who counts, anyway, he said, as though Mother's funeral had been a tournament or a ball. It wasn't fine. It was awful, I said. How could Mother's funeral be fine? The prince was friendly to you. He liked Mother. Your mother was beautiful. His voice was regretful. I'm sorry she's dead. Nathan flicked his whip, and the carriage began to move. All right, here's my commentary on chapter 2. Her dad's a bitch. Am I wrong, though? Homeboy, I think he's one of those guys that's kind of sleazy, you know, like a businessman who's rich, and he just, married the mom because I'm pretty sure the mom was the one that was, royal. I think she's, a lady. She's, slightly related to the royal family somehow. And the dad just kind of married her because she was beautiful. So that stinks. But I also think it's interesting because in the movie, I believe Ella is a little bit older. I think she's 18 or 19 when she first meets the prince. And when they meet, it's on the road. She's just oh, my stepsisters are really interested in him. But she meets, her mom dies when she's 15. And at the funeral, she meets Prince Char. Char. I will probably use those interchangeably because I believe his name is Charmant or Charmant. I don't remember, but it's spelled Char, but I don't know if I'm gonna name him Char or Char. We will find out. I don't know. So far it's been Char, but I feel like Char sounds better. Anyway, so far I like Prince Char, and I think it's nice that he had a connection to the mom that he was like, oh yeah, I really liked her. Like, she was great. Because Ella, I feel like she's gonna, like, have a friend, you know? All right, chapter 3 starts with me getting up to check on my laundry that's still in the dryer. I'm doing all of the... You might be like, Hunter, it's November 3rd. Why are you starting now? Well, Pap, thank you for asking. It's got 7 minutes, so I'll do the next chapter. But my roommates are often home, and I want to be able to record when it's quiet. I should also try recording in my car, because then I can hook my phone up to the speaker in my car. That'd be interesting. Anyway, okay, let me get to my paper. Okay, we're gonna switch hands. There we go. Chapter 3. When we reached the manor, Father ordered me to change into something clean and to hurry down to greet the guests who were arriving to pay their respects. My room was peaceful. Everything was just as it had been before Mother died. The birds embroidered into the coverlet on my bed were safe in their world of cross-stitched leaves. My diary was on the dresser. My friends of my childhood, Flora, the rag doll, and Rosamund, the wooden doll in the gown with 7 flounces, nestled in their basket. I have a piece of hair in my face, and the back of my head needed a little scratch. Okay. I sat on the bed, fighting my need to obey Father's order to change and go back downstairs. I got a hair on the book. Get thee hence, Satan. Okay, all right, nobody panic. Where was I? Although I wanted to draw comfort from my room, from my bed, from the light breeze coming through my window, I kept thinking instead of Father and getting dressed. Once I had overheard Bertha tell Mandy that he was only a person on the outside and that his insides were ashes mixed with coins and a brain. But Mandy had disagreed. He's human through and through. No other creature would be as selfish as he is. Not fairies or gnomes or elves or giants. For a full 3 minutes I delayed getting dressed. It was a terrible game I played, trying to break my curse, seeing how long I could last against the need to do what I had been told. There was a buzzing in my ears, and the floor seemed to tilt so far that I feared I would slide off the bed. I hugged my pillow until my arms hurt, as if the pillow were an anchor against following orders. In a second, I was going to fly apart into 1,000 pieces. I stood and walked to my wardrobe. Immediately, I felt perfectly fine. Although I suspected Father wanted me to wear another morning gown, I put on the frock Mother liked best. She said the spicy green brought out my eyes. I thought I looked like a grasshopper in it, a skinny, spiky grasshopper with a human head and straight hair. But at least the gown wasn't black. She hated black clothing. The great hall was full of people in black. Father came to me instantly. "Here's my last young Eleanor," he said loudly. He led me in, whispering, "You look like a weed in that gown. You're supposed to be in mourning. They'll think you have no respect for your—" I was engulfed from behind by 2 chubby arms encased in rustling black satin. "My poor child, we feel for you." The voice was syrupy. "And Sir Peter, it's dreadful to see you on such a tragic occasion." An extra tight squeeze and I was released. The speaker was a tall, plump lady with long and wavy honey-colored tresses. Her face was a pasty white with thin spots of rouge on her cheeks. With her were 2 smaller versions of herself, but without the rouge. The younger one also lacked her mother's abundant... I must turn the page. Her mother's abundant hair. Instead, she had thin curls stuck tight into her scalp as though glued there. "This is Dame Olga," Father said, touching the tall lady's arm. I curtsied and knocked into the younger girl. "Beg pardon," I said. She didn't answer, didn't move, only watched me. Father continued. "Are these your lovely daughters?" "They are my treasures. This is Hattie, And this is Olive. They are off to finishing school in a few days." Hattie was older than I, but by about 2 years. "Delighted to make your acquaintance," she said, smiling and showing large front teeth. She held her hand out to me as though she expected me to kiss it or bow over it. I stared, uncertain what to do. She lowered her arm, but continued to smile. Olive was the one I'd bumped. "I'm glad to meet you," she said, her voice too loud. She was about my age. The furrows of a frown were permanently etched between her eyes. "Comfort Eleanor in her grief," Dame Olga told her daughters. "I want to talk to Sir Peter." She took father's arm, and they left us. "Our hearts weep for you," Hattie began. "When you bellowed at the funeral, I thought, what a poor thing you are." "Green isn't a mourning color," Olive said. Hattie surveyed the room. "This is a fine hall, almost as fine as the palace where I'm going to live someday. Our mother, Dame Olga, says your father is very rich. She says he can make money out of anything." "Out of a toenail," Olive suggested. "Our mother, Dame Olga, says your father was poor when he married your mother. Our mother says Lady Eleanor was rich when they got married, but your father made her richer." "We're rich too," Olive said. "We're lucky to be rich." "Would you show us the rest of the manor?" Hattie asked. We went upstairs, and Hattie had to look everywhere. She opened the wardrobe in Mother's room, and before I could stop her, she ran her hands over Mother's gowns. When she got back to the hall, she announced, 42 windows and a fireplace in every room. The windows must have cost a trunk full of gold KJs. "Do you want to know about our manor?" Olive asked. I didn't care if they lived in a hollow log. "You'll have to visit us and see for yourself," Hattie said in response to my silence. We stood near the side table, which was loaded with mountains of food, from a whole roast heart with ivy treaded through its antlers to butter cookies as small and lacy as snowflakes. I wondered how Mandy had had time to cook it all. "Would you like something to eat?" "Yeah," Olive began, but her sister interrupted firmly. "Oh, no, thank you. We never eat at parties. The excitement quite takes away our appetites." "My appetite," Olive tried again. "Our appetites are small. Mother worries, but it looks delicious." Hattie edged toward the food. "Quail eggs are such a delicacy. 10 brass KJs apiece. Olive, there are 50 at least." I must turn the page. More quail eggs than windows. "I like gooseberry tarts," Olive said. "We mustn't," Hattie said. "Well, maybe a little." A giant couldn't eat half a leg of deer plus a huge mound of wild rice and 8 of the 50 quail eggs and go back for dessert. But Hattie could. Olive ate even more. Gooseberry tarts and currant bread and cream trifle and plum pudding and chocolate bonbons and spice cake, all dribbled over with butter rum sauce and apricot sauce and peppermint sauce. They brought their plates close to their faces so their forks had the shortest possible distance to travel. Olive ate steadily, but Hattie put her fork down every so often to pat her mouth daintily with her napkin. Then she'd tuck in again as avidly as ever. It was disgusting to watch. I looked down at a throw rug that used to lie under Mother's chair. Today it had been moved near the food. I had never concentrated on it before. A hound and hunters chased a boar toward a fringe of scarlet wool. As I stared, I saw movement. Wind stirred the grass by the boar's feet. I blinked, and the movement stopped. I stared again, and it started again. The dog had just bayed. I felt its throat relax. One of the hunters limped, and I felt a cramp in his calf. The boar gasped for breath and ran on, fear and rage. "What are you looking at?" Olive asked. She had finished eating. I started. I felt as if I'd been in the rug. "Nothing, just the carpet." I glanced at the rug again. An ordinary carpet with an ordinary design. "Your eyes were popping out." "They looked like an ogre's eyes," Hattie said. "Buggy. But there, you look more normal now." She never looked normal. She looked like a rabbit, a fat one, the kind Mandy liked to slaughter for stew. And Olive's face was as blank as a peeled potato. I don't suppose your eyes ever pop out, I said. I don't think so, Hattie smiled complacently. They're too small to pop. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I think that... Let me do that again. I don't suppose your eyes ever pop out, I said. I don't think so, Hattie smiled complacently. They're too small to pop. The smile remained, but now it seemed pasted on. I forgive you, child. We in the peerage are forgiving. Your poor mother used to be known for her ill-breeding, too. Mother used to be known. The past tense froze my tongue. Girls, Dame Olga bore down on us. We must be going. She hugged me, and my nose filled with the stink of spoiled milk. They left. Father was outside in the iron gate, saying goodbye to the rest of the guests. I went to Mandy in the kitchen. She was piling up dirty dishes. Seems like those people didn't eat for a week. I put on an apron and pumped water into the sink. They never tasted your food before. Mandy's cooking was better than anybody else's. Mother and I used to try her recipes sometimes. We'd follow the instructions exactly, and the dish would be delicious, but never as wonderful as when Mandy cooked it. Somehow, it reminded me of the rug. The carpet in the hall with the hunters and the boar. You know, the one, something funny happened to me when I looked at it before. Oh, that silly thing. You shouldn't pay attention to that old rug. She turned to stir a pot of soup. What do you mean? It's just a fairy joke. A fairy rug? How do you know? It belonged to Lady. Mandy always called Mother Lady. That wasn't an answer. Did my fairy godmother give it to her? A long time ago. Did Mother ever tell you who my fairy godmother is? No, she didn't. Where's your father? He's outside saying goodbye. Do you know anyway, even though she never told you? Know what? Who my fairy godmother is. If she'd wanted you to know, your mother would have told you. She was going to, she promised. Please tell me, Mandy. I am. You are not telling. Who is it? Me. Your fairy godmother is me. Here, taste the carrot soup. It's for dinner. How is it? And that's the end of chapter 3. Okay, my commentary... Woo! I dropped my phone. My commentary on chapter 3. First of all, Hattie's the worst. Dame Olga, also the worst. There was something that happened, and I was like, there was something that happened at the beginning of the chapter that I was like, I have a thing about this. So, yeah, her dad kind of sucks. Let me find where it was. She goes, I remember. In the movie, when, like, they show that Ella has to obey, like, they're like, hold your tongue. She, like, grabs her tongue or whatever. I feel like in the movie, they make it so that she, like, has to do it, right? Like, she, like, has no control, and her body just does it of its own accord. But I really like that in the book. It's more that, like, if she doesn't do it, she gets really sick and really nauseous. And so it feels better to do it. But she actually can fight against it. It's just, like, she'll get really, really sick and, like, dizzy and all that stuff. So I do think that I kind of like better in the book than the movie. Because it almost makes it seem like she has a little bit more agency. She can do what she wants a little bit more. I also think that they did a pretty good job of like showing you that Dame Olga and the two stepsisters, well, who will become her stepsisters, spoiler alert, but you already knew that, like just kind of like how poor they are, where they're like, no, we never eat at parties, and then they're like eating half the table, and then she like goes to hug Dame Olga, and Dame Olga smells like sour milk. Just like they do a pretty good job of showing that, like, yeah, Dame Olga and her kids, like, aren't doing well financially. And that, like, Ella's father has a reputation of, like, being able to earn money. Anyway, I am going to switch my laundry over and do my laundry. So, for now, I'm going to end. But for you... I'm also going to take a NyQuil. But for you, it'll be like 2 seconds, and then we'll start chapter 4.